This series will be structured like a tour. I will do my best to share with you the locations and settings of each story in order to allow you the best possible perspective. Each episode will focus on 1 to 2 prominent locations of the home and the experiences or events that have happened there. I originally started as a part-time summer employee here at the home, and I never really spent much, if any, time inside, as my job was to help with landscaping, cutting the grass, weed whacking, lifting the heavy shit because I'm young, etc. I like to call myself the landscape assistant, whereas my boss or coworker, who would later become and still is a very close friend to this day, would refer to me as my part-time bitch. Probably the more accurate title now that I think of it. But anyway, we cut about 15 acres of grass, and that doesn't include the gardens we have to upkeep, as well as all the other responsibilities we had outside. So again, I wasn't close with the inside of the building as a whole, and I never had a chance to experience anything out of the ordinary, except for on wheelchair nights. What are wheelchair nights, you might ask? Every other Friday night, myself, along with another one of my coworkers, have to wash each one of the residents' wheelchairs. As an effort to save your last meal from coming up, I will spare you the details of this activity. But because we can't start washing the wheelchairs until the residents are in bed, that left time where I would be given different tasks to complete while we were waiting. Most of the time, it was reorganizing our storage areas and carrying boxes around the facility. This meant that I would be making many trips up and down the stairs of the old mansion, up from the storage rooms in the basement to the second floor and attic. It was on one of those Fridays that I would have my first experience. It was late summer, so the sun had been starting to set earlier and earlier. On the second floor, right at the top of the stairs, you come to a landing or hallway area that leads to another hallway which connects all of the old bedrooms, some of which are offices and others which are still bedrooms. But if you make a quick right turn once you reach the landing, there's a large room that the administrative staff uses as a break room or dining area. About once every month or so, it was my job to bring up cases of water and soda to that break room to replenish what had been drank. So on this Wheelchair Friday, it was one of my tasks to do so. It wasn't my first time doing it, however, it was the first time I had done it so late when the sun was below the horizon and when nobody was left in the administration building. As I ascended the stairs with the first 2 cases of water, I just couldn't shake the feeling of there being somebody following me or watching my every move. I shook it off, even though I really just wanted to get the heck out of there and just tell my boss that I had forgotten to do it. However, I thought that that was a pretty bad excuse, and I wasn't able to think of a better one at the time. It wasn't completely dark yet, however, the only lighting in that area is 3 old brass light fixtures hanging from the ceiling with 2 dim candlelight bulbs in each, as well as another dim light fixture hung on the wall. Speaking of the walls, the mansion's walls are off-white in color with dark mahogany wood accents, which does no favors when it comes to reflecting what dim light is present in the area. I made the choice to not look over my shoulder and to not look towards the hallway with the bedrooms, as I felt that had I done so, I would come face to face with something or someone. I stepped up my pace, making record time as I finished bringing up the rest of the refreshments upstairs. I couldn't help but to become more paranoid as I went, because whenever I came to a stop, I could hear footsteps continuing around me. The hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood up, and I just couldn't wait to finish this delivery and go back downstairs where I would be safe. But before I made my final descent, out of pure curiosity, I couldn't help but to look towards the bedrooms. 2 old wood doors with beautifully decorated etched glass panels were the only things that stood between me and a dark shadow figure ominously staring in my direction. As soon as I turned and looked at it, it appeared to flee towards the old bedrooms. Meanwhile, I had the same idea, only I fled back downstairs and away from the administration building. As shaken as I was, I needed to find out who or what was up there with me. I asked around to see if anybody else had ever seen or came across anything strange up there. As it turns out, I wasn't the only person to have an experience. Most other people's experiences on the second floor were just the usual strange noises and uneasy feelings, as though something was watching their every move, but nobody else seemed to have seen what I did that one summer night. That is, except for a coworker of mine who works in administration. I was in her office, which is located on the second floor, going over some paperwork with her one day when we somehow got onto the topic of the paranormal. I had asked her how she was able to work up there, a lot of the time alone and after 3 o'clock when everybody else leaves, but without feeling or seeing anything out of the ordinary. It was then that she told me a story that gave me chills. She told me about a Wednesday night that she was working late because she was trying to get the payroll in order. She was alone, and it was around 5 o'clock when she began feeling that same paranoia that so many others, including myself, feel when on that floor. Her office is one of the converted bedrooms, and from her desk, she has a direct line of sight to the landing and the attic staircase. When her paranoia started to increase, she looked up from her desk and found herself in a stare-down with a dark shadow figure standing on the landing. She said that she felt like the figure wanted her to leave and wouldn't go away until she did. So, like me, and my experience with this figure, she finished up what she was working on and hurried out of the building. As soon as she finished telling me her story, I was shaken because of how similar our experiences were. I asked her what the figure looked like, and she described her as the following: a dark shadow figure of an older woman dressed in mid to late 1800s clothing. By this time, I had already done some research on the original property owners, and the story and the identity of this ominous figure was finally starting to become clearer. You see, the wealthy businessman I spoke of in the first episode actually built a mansion for his wife, who I will call Mrs. L. Back in the day, the household, especially one of upper class as this one was truly run by the wife. There would be nothing going on in that house that she was not aware of. For example, with the exception of a party or small gathering, there should be nobody inside the house without the wife knowing about it. Especially not in the residential area of the home, and especially not during the late evening, which it just so happens that my coworker and myself were when we had our respective experiences. It's for this reason that I believe that the dark shadow figure we saw was not necessarily anything negative, but just the lady of the house keeping an eye on uninvited guests who were in her home. It's quite clear, to me at least, that while the mansion is now a part of a nursing home, it's also still Mrs. L's home, and she likes to remind us of that from time to time. I had to make a lot of assumptions to come up with my theory of what, or better yet, who it is that still wanders the hallways of the mansion. But what would happen to me in the attic of the mansion? Well, that would just solidify my theory.